This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
Thank you for joining us today for our program, The Brain on Drugs. I'm Stan Rhodes. When the famous fried egg public service announcement first came out in 1987, scientists at the time didn't have the equipment to non-surgically look inside of people's brains. They do now. New technology has enabled researchers to see exactly how the brain develops through time. And as a result, it has changed how we now look at things such as teen behavior, drug use, and drug prevention. Well, three experts are with me today on the program as we will talk about the brain on drugs. Let me introduce my guests. Dr. Timothy Condon is a neuroscientist and the Deputy Director of NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Dr. Amelia Aria is the Director of the Center on Young Adult Health and Development at the University of Maryland School of Public Health and the Senior Scientist at the Treatment Research Institute, or TRI. And Ms. Senta Gowdy is the Chief of Prevention in the Florida Office of Drug Control in Tallahassee, Florida. Well, welcome everyone. I remember seeing that back in 1987, and it did have an impact on me. I thought it was a rather strong message, but is it accurate today?
Well, it's not accurate today, but back in 1986, 87, when that was popularized by our good friends at the Partnership for Drug-Free America, it was a metaphor, and it was the state of the science. That's the way we had to depict your brain on drugs, was an egg in a frying pan, to kind of talk about and suggest the impact of drugs on the brain. But with the advance of neuroimaging technologies, PET, MRI, we actually can see how drugs actually are working in the brain in real time now.
Was that message aimed at adolescents, teens, adults? Who was it aimed at?
I believe it was aimed at the general public. That's another change that we've been able to grow in our understanding of how the brain works, and so we can target our messages now based on what is developmentally appropriate. And so our messages don't have to be one size fits all, which is one of the changes that this new technology that Dr. Condon's talking about is so wonderful.
So in 23, 24 years' time, we know more now of what's happening to the brain.
A lot more.
How about general brain development? What do we know that we didn't know?
Well, you know, way back then, in the 80s,
seems so far away.
Doesn't seem that far away now. But we actually only in the last 10 years have learned that the brain continues to develop long past when we thought it was finished. And so into the early 20s. So general brain development continues for a long period of time. And that's new information that we don't have all the answers about, but really says that we have to think about these things differently.
So how new is this research, this information that we have that has changed our thoughts about development?
In the past 5 to 10 years, there's really been an explosion of new research and new technologies that enable us to sort of peek into the brain and understand the relationship between the biology and the behavior.
Okay, before we go any further, let's talk about in general terms about the brain itself. What areas make up the brain?
Well, there are the older basic areas of the brain, the midbrain, kind of what we call the vestigial areas of the brain. And here you see the areas like the hypothalamus and the pons and the medulla, areas that are about basic body physiology, about heart rate and breathing and about emotional types of things. And then there's the cerebral cortex on the top, which is a higher order. It's an area that develops last. It's an area most developed in human beings and not so much in lower animals. And that's an area that helps us with more of our thinking.
So different parts do different things.
Absolutely.
So normally, how does the brain receive and process information?
Well, the brain receives information from external stimuli, from our senses, vision,
eyes, ears, smell.
touch,
Yeah.
smell, auditory, yeah, and that information is processed in a whole variety of ways by these chemical messengers, and it's processed through through a mechanism called neurotransmission, which is essentially how one brain cell communicates with the next brain cell. That's neurotransmission.
So we've wrapped up exactly how the brain works in just a few minutes.
Pretty much.
There's a whole lot more to it than that, I'm sure. When is it that the brain is considered fully developed?
Well, we know now, as Amelia was mentioning, is that really only in the last 5 to 8 years, because of the studies looking at adolescent brain development, a normal adolescent brain development using these new imaging technologies, that we know now that the brain is fully developed only to the early 20s now. Before we thought it was much, much earlier. But we know all during the teens the brain is still developing, and that the last area of the brain to develop are these higher cortical areas.
You know, we talk a lot about early development, which is a critical time for the human brain. And there's a lot of information about the developmental stages of early childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And
what ages are you talking about?
I'm talking 0 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
What we've learned now with the new technology is that there are developmental stages. And so, you know, there's things that are happening developmentally, of course, when an infant begins to learn to just be able to pick up something, all the way through now till our mid-20s. And so different developmental stages occur along that path. And how our youth develop across that time, their experiences, their environment, their genetics, all those have a part to play in their developmental stages. So people are really familiar, parents especially, are familiar with those early developmental stages and how, as your infant is growing, you need to help support their development. What this new technology is giving us is early information that will help parents, teachers, anyone who's working with youth understand that there are developmentally appropriate times for education, for experiences, and for how they react with the youth in their lives.
And that's a new message.
It's a very new message, and we're still developing it. There's still things that we don't know, but we do know definitely that there are developmental stages up through the 20s, and knowing that means that we have so much more tools and valuable information to help them grow and mature so that they have successful and happy and healthy lives.
What happens to the brain during adolescence?
Well, it continues to mature.
It's growing physically and in size, and
It's growing in size. It's growing in the connections. The different areas of the brain are essentially connecting up. And that sounds kind of funny, but that's really what the brain maturation is all about.
and this is normal.
This is normal, and this is, you know, it's not the same for everyone, and every individual is not from 0 to 22 years of age. But in this picture, you can see that that blue represents, that dark blue is the maturation, which occurs from the back of the brain, which are areas involved in our motor function, coordination, to the front of the brain and the sides, with the areas, again, involved in decision-making and things like executive function. So
It starts at the back of the brain and proceeds forward.
cerebellum, motor function, very fine coordination. You can watch that in your young children as they start to be able to pick things up and to walk. Motivation, that's a next area that kind of develops. And then emotional areas are very important, and those are developing all along, because we certainly know that our young kids and our adolescents and our teenagers certainly have a healthy emotional life. And then the last area is, again, the area involved in things like judgment, decision making.
Things we could use a lot earlier come a little bit later.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that a lot of parents don't realize that children aren't going to process the information the same way as they do. And they need to realize that if that's still immature, they have to help them become that frontal lobe, and they have to understand and not get so angry and frustrated that their children aren't getting it.
That's got to be a difficult message to get across, because for eons we've been thinking that somebody who is 16, 17 years old or what have you is nothing more than a little adult and has all the same things that you should have at 30, 40, 50.
Right, and it shouldn't really be interpreted to mean that you shouldn't give children responsibilities that are sophisticated, or that you should cut them a break if they're continually not understanding something. Or I think that you just need to understand that they may need more guidance in terms of understanding the consequences of their actions, things that are sort of controlled by that frontal area.
Sure. Dr. Condon, what is gray matter?
Well, gray matter is the really the brain tissue itself, and when it's the neurons, the brain cells
It would
themselves.
appear in
and
color
they
as gray
appear
matter?
gray, and when they fully develop, a lot of the areas are covered by you see white matter, because the white is something called myelin, which is a compound that actually increases the transmission or the speed at which these signals travel between brain cells. So,
So the brain physically changes as we grow.
yes, it physically changes. It grows larger, and as I mentioned before, the connectivity changes so that I think we have a picture here. As you can see, the blue is the maturation of the cells. They're finally connecting up.
And this would be what age, approximately?
Well, again, it goes from, in this video that you're seeing, this is from 0 to 22 years of age.
0 to 22.
So it's a time lapsed over years. Very elaborate and very important research published just about 5 or 6 years ago now.
And I think what is very important to realize is that the connectivity that Dr. Condon is talking about enables the brain to focus more on important tasks rather than having a multitude of information being processed at the same time. The brain becomes better at focusing. So there's actual pruning of areas that aren't as important, and you begin to have that ability to focus better.
Those areas that are pruned, what happens to them?
Well, it's think of it maybe, and I'm more of a lay person than my friends with me, but think of it as sort of a rewiring occurs. The research that I've read indicates that it starts for some people around 11 and 12, 10, 11, and the brain begins this process of rewiring itself. So in those early years, we hear, you need to provide them with all the stimulation and education so that all these connections, the communication pieces, are put together to help that early brain deal with its environment that it's in. When the brain gets to that stage, 10, 11, 12, it begins the process of saying, I don't need that piece anymore. I need now to move ahead with getting ready to be more mature. And so
And this is a natural maturation process.
It is very much a part of how we all got to where we are today.
It is a natural part. It's the brain's very redundant early on, and that this pruning determines the specificity of how these particular areas of the brain and what their function is going to be. And so that is really kind of it in a nutshell.
So anyone who's ever raised a 10 or 12-year-old, they start behaving a little differently then, and you're like, oh my gosh, what has happened to this lovely
overnight it has changed.
Well, really, honestly, you can almost see it in how they are behaving, and none of us knew until a few years ago, but they certainly aren't understanding what's happening to their brain, of course. But you can watch it. You can watch how their behavior changes and how they move from one stage to a more emotional stage, and how we as adults then interact with them needs to understand that they have moved from this place to this place in their developmental stage. And just like when they're smaller and they're learning to walk, and you have to be sure that you've got all your sharp instruments out of the way, you keep them away from the hot oven,
the precautions, right.
All of those things that you did when they were at that stage. There's a whole new set of them that you now need to be aware of, and I think that's what Amelia was referring to, is that they've got the walking part down now. But now, you have to remind them to look before they cross the street. And just saying it to them once is not going to work, because they're at an emotional place in their lives, and they're in this world that's much different than the world that we're in, and
it's
us
changing.
to be able to recognize that.
Well, is it the same for boys and girls? I mean, is it the same level? Everything happens along the same?
That's something that we're really very interested in, and that we're looking at.
This is new?
Yeah, we look mainly at the behavior of boys and girls and the risk for engaging in drug taking by gender, but we really haven't figured out completely how the brain development is contributing to those gender differences. It's a very interesting area.
I'm curious to know about their ability to make emotional decisions, and is it rather impulsive at that age, adolescence?
Well, certainly anyone who's had children and adolescent know that that's correct. And these limbic areas of the brain that are more involved in emotional aspects are activated by emotional memories or emotional reading or emotional faces. Whereas, as you can see in this slide, an adult brain, the cortical areas showing the same emotional message gets activated differently. So again,
it's more that when you make a decision, not necessarily an emotional decision, any decision is governed more by the emotional parts of the brain.
During that stage? During
that stage. So rather than the cortical areas being responsible for that decision, where you have more reasoning, you have the emotions driving the decision. So it's not necessarily an emotional decision that you have to make, or a decision about a relationship or something emotional. It's a decision about anything where the emotions will play a bigger part in an adolescent than in an adult.
Well, all you have to do is look at popular media and look at how emotional all those current movies are that are aimed at that population.
Right, because we have the feeling that,
Right,
we have a feeling that most teenagers are risk takers.
Well, it is part of the brain's development, and it is part of the natural maturation process that they then engage in more risky behavior because of the maturation process, because they move from an emotional place more than a thinking place, where they have their critical thinking skills are not as fully developed as ours are at our ages. So they have to move from that place. That's the place that they are at.
But parents and adults tend to think nowadays, because they're not up to date with the research that is coming out, want to say, why did you do that? Why did we've taught you better than that. We've given you the information. Why did you do that? And many times the response might be, I don't know.
Right. It's because they're not able to evaluate. And I hate to generalize, because there's a lot of individual variability with a lot of children. And some kids are very good at judging the effect of their own actions.
And that's because the brain is growing at a different rate perhaps than someone else.
And just foreseeing the consequences. Or maybe they've had an older brother or sister where something has happened, and they've incorporated that into their own decision making. So it's not all about the brain, it's about how the brain is processing information from the environment as well. So in terms of a child, like you said, who you're saying, how did you make such a stupid decision? It's because they weren't able to judge the long-term consequences of that decision, and they just never thought about it. They were sort of living in the day-to-day and not really thinking 3 steps down the line.
So some parents think, well, wait a minute, I've told you once, I shouldn't have to tell you again. That doesn't hold true.
Yeah, my mother used to say, a word to the wise is sufficient, and we have to remember that we're not always as wise as our parents would want us to be at 12 or 13 years old.
You know, Stan, I think you put it really well when you said that thinking that a 16-year-old is just a small adult isn't really the correct way to look at it. And so if you think of as an adult, and I'm sure this never happened to you, but if you had a colleague who insulted you or offended you and you got angry, and then you think about your response before you initiate it. A younger person, no, doesn't work that way. And that's because these connectivities, this decision-making process is weighing the costs and the risks and the actual appropriate behavior or the appropriate response. And it's literally making that kind of balancing act. And that develops later on.
But I think it's important to understand that children aren't thinking of these consequences, but we can talk to them about the consequences, and they can be educated about the consequences, so the next time a decision is made, they have the benefit of our education or the voice in their head.
And it may take more than once or twice or three times
but
to get across.
I don't want you to interpret this to mean that they're incapable of making good decisions. It's just that they need more help and more education about, well, what are those long-term consequences and some concrete examples of what those consequences could be. Like pointing out in the paper, reading a story about a teenager who had too many kids in the car and got involved in an accident. That's a good example to bring up to your teenager and say, this is an example of how this person didn't think about the long-term consequences.
Well, we could keep on talking about that. We're going to take a short break. We've talked a lot about how the brain develops, and when we come back, we'll talk about what drugs do to the brain when our program, The Brain on Drugs, continues. And welcome back to our program, The Brain on Drugs. It is a fascinating topic. We're going to dive back into our topic of what drugs do to the brain. Well, how do drugs impact the brain? In what ways?
Wow, so many different drugs, so many different areas of the brain they impact. But ultimately, all drugs of abuse impact on this reward pathway, this pleasure area that's, as you can see in this slide, depicted here in red. This is an area that rewards us for normal functions. These are all the normal pleasurable experiences that reinforce themselves. Food, sex. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for food and sex being reinforcing activities.
And all those communicate pleasure to the brain in one way or another.
And absolutely. And the drugs, in fact, work on those same specific areas, only they turn up the heat. They turn up the volume more.
Does it affect nerve cells as well?
I'm sorry?
Nerve cells as well?
Absolutely. It can have specific effects on specific cells. So, but again, different drugs are different. Alcohol, for example, affects every cell in the body and specifically works on some more than others. Cocaine binds specifically to some cocaine receptors in the brain, that we know now are mostly in this area of the brain involved in this reward. Here's a slide showing cocaine and brain receptors. We can see here that the cocaine actually binds to what we call the dopamine reuptake transporter. It's depicted here in the red. And what it does is it blocks the reuptake of this neurotransmitter dopamine. And when it blocks the reuptake, that means it floods the area with dopamine, and you like that. Mm-hmm. That is part of the pleasurable experiences that drugs cause.
So how does that affect our processing of information? What does it do?
Well, I think one of the things that it does is it sensitizes us to the next time we have an opportunity to use that drug. We remember those pleasurable experiences and we'd like to do it again. So even sometimes the environment that you're in or the setting will trigger that pleasurable response and will cause you to want to engage in the behavior again.
But what about when you're under this extreme pleasure? You're at the maximum high. How does it affect your ability or a person's ability to make decisions, to think, to process what's going on outside?
Well, it affects it quite a bit. I mean, there's a major impact of intoxication with drugs. People who are intoxicated under the influence of drugs don't make good decisions.
So we can use intoxication with drugs as well as with alcohol?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Alcohol is a drug. There's not a distinction here except perhaps the legality of the drug. So no. These work on the same areas of the brain. They have the same abuse liability, as we say. And again, it impacts your judgment, your decision making, your motor function, your ability to drive, for example. We know that. That's and so it has impact on a lot of these different areas of the brain.
Senta, do most people know this information we've just talked about?
No, they understand that something happens to their teen. The teen's emotions are sometimes they appear to us adults to be really out of control. They'll be laughing one minute and they'll be crying the next minute, and for no apparent reason. So that we don't understand what's going on. We think it's just they've got the hormones. They're crazy at this age. But again, back to the adolescent brain development piece of this question, we now understand that they are moving from an emotional place. They're just developing their executive function or their judgment ability. And when they're in that stage, we need to understand that we need to be clear, we need to be firm, we need to be consistent, we need to give them lots of experiences to help them develop their skill set, just like I think you were talking at the break of skills like practicing using the piano or other skills, practicing sports.
Redirect.
Right. Well, the brain is rewiring, we're reconnecting, we're building the communication, those connections that are going to be critical to them the rest of their lives. And as they develop that executive function, their ability to use judgment, it is up to those of us who care and love them to give them the kind of experiences and the environment, because it's the experiences that they have, the environment that they're in during this critical developmental stage has some long-lasting impacts. We know that who among us hasn't traveled, halfway around the world to go to a reunion with people that we went to high school with? We have some emotional attachments that we make during that period that really stay with us the rest of our lives and give us the impressions that we have of what we like and what we enjoy. And when you introduce another element to that has an impact on the pleasure center, we don't know what that's going to do long term, but we do know from the research that when youth begin to use alcohol and other drugs, the earlier they do that, the more likely they are to develop dependence and addiction. They are more likely to have serious problems later. They start experiencing lack of school success. They have problems in school. they're more likely to then begin to get into some serious consequences, health consequences, and life consequences.
Amelia, when does this start? At what age are we seeing these kinds of behaviors?
Well, typically the age of onset, the age of exposure opportunity is way back in the middle school years where children have a chance to try things.
Has that changed through the years?
It's gotten younger.
Younger and younger?
And what has also changed is the variety of opportunity exposures. The slide that is being shown is among students who have entered college. And when you look at college-bound adolescents, of course, it's going to be different. But the age of exposure opportunity.
These are exposure items, alcohol, tobacco.
Right, just having a chance to try something. And the age of exposure opportunity is, in the middle school to high school years for alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana. But then when they hit college, they have a wide variety of exposure opportunities to non-medical prescription drugs and other illicit drugs.
So does it progress from a choice to a need?
In some people, we know that there's a lot of work on the genetic vulnerability to developing drug addiction problems.
Are some people wired that way, predisposed to be that way?
Are predisposed to more problems given the exposure to the drugs. Certainly, we know that.
Mm-hmm. How do the drugs impair the ability to think clearly? How do they act?
Well, long-term drug use actually causes a dysfunction in this area that we've been talking about, this prefrontal area involved in judgment and decision making. So you can't weigh the risks and the positives so well, the consequences. You can't do those kinds of calculations that you normally do anymore. And what becomes much more important is, in fact, the drug itself. As you can see in this slide, this one area of the brain, the striatum, where we see these are showing you changes in the dopamine receptor molecule.
And so in electricine, what, cocaine, meth, alcohol, and heroin.
So we have the control on one side, as you can see, and the brighter colors, red and yellow here, have more dopamine receptor binding. And on the other side is an individual who's a long-term user, someone addicted to cocaine, meth, alcohol, or heroin. And you can see in this striatal area, again, this is that area involved in reward and reinforcement. There's a dramatic reduction in the amount of dopamine activity in those areas. And so there's been a dramatic change or consequence after long-term drug use.
Can this be reversed? Can this change? Can we recover what's happened?
Treatment does work, and recovery, of course, is what we want everyone to strive for, that is in our treatment programs. So yes, we can help people who have developed dependence and addiction, and we can help them move to a place of recovery where they can regain their lives.
Tim, do different drugs react differently in a person's brain?
Well, the short answer is yes, but there's a commonality. Specific drugs, as I mentioned, might interact with a specific receptor in different areas of the brain, but ultimately they all end up impacting on this dopamine system because that's that area involved in that reward or that reinforcement. Here's an example of cocaine. Actually, this is your brain on drugs. So this is actually
this is not the frying pan and egg.
No, this is actually from the early 90s. This is the time course of cocaine. What you're seeing is the light colors, the bright colors here, are actually binding of cocaine in the brain of this individual. And this is first one is 1 to 2 minutes, and then you see cocaine starts to bind in these areas. And then as you see at about 6 or 7 minutes, this same area where I was talking about dopamine receptors before, it's the same area, this kidney-shaped area, this striatal area. Cocaine is binding in that area at 6 to 7 minutes, and you really that's part of the impact of what drugs are having on that area.
Is that the maximum of pleasure at that point? Is the 7 to 8 minute mark somewhere in that area?
It probably is associated with the highest level of euphoria. I mean, I'm not a drug user,
No.
so I can't tell you the answer to that, but the studies have shown that the rapid onset, and that's what really keeps people coming back.
And those frames were taken how? Is that MRI or what technology?
Those particular ones, I believe, were positron emission tomography.
Okay. And those are just slices across the brain, and it was done from a period of 1 to 30 minutes?
I think that's
Something
what the
like
time
that?
course was, yeah.
And that's how fast the threshold, how fast the high comes and goes
Well,
away.
anyone who's taken drugs could tell you that the threshold's
Wow.
very quick for cocaine. If you take it, if you inject it, if you smoke it, if you inhale it, those are very rapid onsets. And so the route of administration is also an important aspect. The faster it gets into the brain, the bigger the impact, and the more likely that person will end up having a problem and becoming addicted.
You can also see where addiction, by looking at those scans, I think you can get an idea of how addiction happens, because the high is so fast and then it comes back down. And because it's impacted your pleasure center, you're going to seek that behavior again. Over time, you need more and more of the drug in order to do that. So it has a physiological impact as well as working on that emotional component.
Is that blinding the person from seeing that there are consequences, future consequences from doing that behavior?
Yes, and I think that one of the cardinal features of drug addiction is the narrowing of the behavior associated with drug use. So not just that they can't see the consequences, but they can't see the consequences on how the drug use is restricting other parts of their life. So typically drug users will end up consciously or unconsciously seeking out people who are doing the same things. So all of their friends become drug users. All of their activities are focused on getting that drug. So missing class or a relationship falls second to the drug use.
And that becomes their circle of society.
And that becomes their circle, and that's the cardinal feature of drug addiction.
So it insulates them to some degree.
And then it just sort of gets worse and worse. And the people that they've hurt and left behind are not going to be there to help them because they become so frustrated. So it just ends up with this very negative feedback cycle.
Right.
And I think another thing to keep in mind is again, when you think about the situation that Amelia just described, almost like when we were talking about adolescents, well, why can't they just make a better decision? And those who are left behind and who love them and are not caught up in this cycle that they're in don't understand why they just can't make a decision to move out of it. And as we see, it has a profound physiological impact on the brain. And a lot of those functions then are not able to, they're just physically not able to make those decisions. So
what do we do for those people?
Well, we need to intervene as early as possible. One of the challenges that we have in my field, because I'm trying to communicate what they've given us, this wonderful research, is that the sooner that you can intervene with someone, the better. Because if you wait a long time, it becomes much more difficult. And traditionally we think, well, you have to wait until they hit bottom. You have to wait until you can get them into, until they want help. But particularly for adolescents, the message is please don't wait. The first sign of something, even if it's picking up a tobacco habit, if it's beginning, the first sign of any use of alcohol, a lot of times we see people in our young people, adolescents in our treatment system, it isn't until they begin to get in trouble with the law, maybe with marijuana, that we see them in treatment. And by then they've built these behaviors, they've already moved into a cycle that Amelia was discussing. They've dropped off friends, they've developed this other peer circle. So our message to parents is to intervene as early as possible. And that alcohol is serious. Too often, because it is a legal drug, because there's a lot of promotion with it, And because many of us as well use it, we don't perceive it as being so dangerous for an adolescent, when really it is very dangerous.
It is very, very dangerous.
And while we don't know exactly what it may do to a developing brain, we do know that all these other things do occur. And particularly with adolescents, please don't wait. Please intervene early. And there are many resources out there to help parents, schools, and the youth themselves.
Very good message. Well, we've got to take another short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what to do with all of this information. Knowing the science could make your prevention efforts more successful.
Drugs are talking to your kids. Are you? Find the right words at drugfree.org.
Freeze 1.
There were stacks of heads chiseling in the easy.
There were stacks of heads chiseling in the heezy.
Freeze 2.
Homie was flossing his grip of cheddar.
Homie was flossing his grip of cheddar. His whip is a janky hoopty.
His whip is a janky hoopty.
Janky hoopty? His whip is a janky hoopy.
You may not understand your kids, but your kids understand you. Talk to them about drugs. Need help? Get help. Visit our website at drugfree.org.
Well, the best way to keep drugs away from the brain is to keep people away from the drugs in the first place. And that means effective prevention efforts. Tim, you had a follow-up you wanted to say.
Well, Stan, we were talking during the break about the early interventions, and we absolutely are all on the same page. How important is that for our adolescents? But you know, it's actually also important for adults as well. And so we didn't want to leave that out. To do an intervention to prevent people from progressing from drug use to abuse to full-blown addiction is very important. And so you really don't need to wait till people hit rock bottom. Interventions can work for people who are just abusing drugs before they become dependent, and that's a really important message we want to get across.
So early.
Early.
So how has the evolution of science and knowledge impacted our prevention programs?
Well, we are thrilled to have these new pieces of information. It explains so many things about why we do the things that we do. And we talk about, we want parents to have dinner with their children regularly. Well, what is it about having dinner with your children regularly? It's about communicating standards and ideas. It's what Amelia was talking about, being able to have the relationship there that helps us be clear, be firm, be consistent with our youth, because they're going through this developmental stage and they're developing their judgment. And as they develop judgment, it's important that they have good examples of that. They have opportunities to learn, safe places to test their boundaries as they grow. And so we, as we develop our prevention messaging, as we work with parents and other stakeholders, if you think about teachers in public schools, if you look at school resource officers, you look at anyone who interacts with youth, even store clerks in convenience stores. I've watched them, someone underage trying to talk them into giving them a beer. And store clerks today, because of this information about the teen brain, about once they understand why the laws are the way they are, I've seen store clerks be incensed that a teenager would try and purchase something illegal from them.
Right, but that's happened throughout the ages, I'm sure.
But what we are able to do with this piece of information is to share the why. why we need to be consistent with them, why the law is what it is, why we want kids to have healthy environments, and we want them to have positive experiences, and we want them to be engaged with their parents. You know, they are by nature risk takers at this point. That's part of their development, and they're building their skill set around their judgment. But they need to know how critical their decision making is. Parents are the biggest influence. Parents are the biggest influencer even to me today at my age. So while they're pushing away their parents, and as a parent of a teenager, I was adverse to this creature that had suddenly my child had turned into. It was very important for me to know that I was still the primary influencer. Even though their peers were suddenly pulling their attention away, but even through college years, parents have a major role to play.
Right. I'm curious, Amelia, do teenagers, do they want to know this science, know this information?
I think what teenagers want is to be successful and accepted and have a good life. And
more in the moment?
Well, no, and have a good, future. I really do think that families in general don't want to have drug problems in their family. There's no one that wakes up and says, well, I want to become a drug-dependent person.
Right.
And I think that this information and what we can do as researchers is translate that so it has an impact on their knowledge about what is real and what is true, rather than have them go on hearsay about what they might think is true. So I think that they do respond to education. They do respond to real facts.
To the real facts, to the science of what's going on.
I think that they do want that. I think parents want that. I think teenagers want that. Because I don't think any teenager wants to have something happen to them or their friend.
Well, how are they receiving the new information that we've discussed today?
Well, I think one of the ways is through personal stories. That's one of the biggest influences on children and adolescents, is that they really, a lot of take-home messages are through personal stories. And peer education efforts in the schools have been very effective by educating a group of peers who are willing to be that leader and take on that responsibility of sharing the information with other kids. But they take it through the media, they can take it through their parents, they receive this information through a lot of different sources. And it's our responsibility, I think, as scientists, to do an even better job in translating some of the research.
And get that message out.
Yeah.
Well, there is a prevention campaign that is running in Florida, and it's the Be the Wall campaign. We're going to take a look.
Think you've talked to your teen enough about alcohol?
Meet the teen brain. Illogical. Thrill-seeking. Emotional. Impulsive. Why is the dog in the washer?
I was just trying to help.
Perhaps Johnny needed more instructions when you told him to wash the dog. The brain develops into the mid-20s. Until then, your teen is more likely to be illogical and impulsive.
When it comes to teens and alcohol, be clear, be firm, be consistent.
Be the Wall, because they need you now more than ever.
Brought to you by BeTheWall.org.
Think you've talked to your teen enough about alcohol?
Meet the teen brain. Illogical. Thrill-seeking. Emotional. Rebellious.
Can I have a ride to school?
You are not wearing that to school.
Oh my gosh, you never let me do anything.
When she said she was getting dressed for school, you probably envisioned more clothes. The brain develops into the mid-20s. Until then, your teen is more likely to test boundaries.
When it comes to teens and alcohol, be firm, be clear, be consistent.
Be the Wall, because they need you now more than ever. For more information, log on to BeTheWall.org.
Sponsored by the Florida Governor's Office of Drug Control and the Department of Children and Families.
I must say that I have seen this campaign in a theater.
Good.
And it was funny because most of the adults were laughing.
Yes.
The teens were watching, but the adults were laughing.
Well, it's really aimed at parents. I mean, it is about parents, and it is to try and get this new information out to them. When we started developing the campaign about 1.5 years ago, we had this little piece of information about how the brain develops up until the 20s. We are like, that's a fairly complex kind of thing, and how do you put that in a 30-second ad, and how do we brand that information? We really wanted to use marketing techniques to change parent behavior. So we moved to the Be the Wall campaign because we wanted parents to be be the wall for their youth. Again, when they're little, you tell them not to touch the stove because it's hot, but when they get to looking like an adult, then what do you do with them? You begin to assume that they have the same abilities that an adult does. Mm-hmm. So we took the research and we tested it with parents to see what they would react to and would they get the message. It's very important to test these because sometimes you have unintended consequences with your messages. These tested really well. And we wanted to use humor too because we remember humor, we enjoy humor,
mm-hmm.
and we
Yes.
didn't want to use scare tactics. Scare tactics really do not work. Kids want to know the truth as we adults want to know the truth. So this is about what we know, and it's using humor, and anyone who's had a teenager knows, again, that 1 minute they're crying, 1 minute they're laughing, 1 minute they love you, 1 minute they hate you. And this is a way to help parents understand their role and that they are the primary influencer.
You mentioned scare tactics, and I'm sure there are many parents out there that think, well, hey, it worked for me, it will work for my kid. Does it work in some elements? Does it have a place?
No. It really, kids want the truth, and when you exaggerate the truth or you're not honest with them, it has a negative impact. It really has the opposite consequence that you want. So yes, we need to tell them the facts. We need to be honest about it. There's some things we don't know. And that's true with adults. We need to be clear about what we know about the science, mm-hmm. and we need to be able to put it in a message for them that they can use, in a way that they can use it. Mm-hmm. So the campaign was developed in order to get this information out in a way that that parents could use it. And we've been testing our market here in Florida. We've seen a 32% increase in parents' understanding of their role as it relates to adolescent brain development. That because the adolescent brain is developing, because this executive function isn't mm-hmm. completely there, that they still have a very strong role to play in keeping their children safe and healthy and helping them grow.
Well, I think it's helping the executive function of the adults who are watching this. It helped me to see that. Yes. Tim, question, what kinds of things can we think are on in the future coming up for us in terms of science and technology that might help you as a researcher and as well, Amelia?
Well, one of the things that Amelia and I have talked about is understanding how communications research can actually help us tailor prevention messages for these different times when young people are developing. And so how do you find the right balance of all of these advertising or message development areas? And that's a whole area of research that we're pursuing as well. Understanding the long-term consequences of drugs in the brain is something we still need a lot more research on. And so, again, giving kids the facts about that is, from my perspective, is scary enough.
Do you feel we're getting close to having that knowledge and information?
Well, I think we have a lot of it, that long-term consequences can be very serious, and that people become addicted and dependent, and their lives spiral out of control. And so, does that happen to everyone? No. Is everybody vulnerable? No. But who is? Yes. We don't have the answers to that exactly. Right. And that's one of the areas that we'll be spending a bigger investment in the future, is understanding who's vulnerable, who's not so vulnerable, both from a biological point of view, but mm-hmm. also from an environmental point of view.
Sure. Go ahead.
One of the new areas of research that we're undertaking is understanding how drug use in college may restrict your opportunities or cause you to sort of settle for something less than what you expected to get out of college. So it may not take you completely off course or derail your entire life, but it may lead to just less than what you had originally intended for yourself.
Or a momentary stoppage from mm-hmm. progressing forward. How do we balance the need to protect with the need for adolescents to grow and learn?
Well, I think there's definitely, as a parent myself, I'm continually faced with that challenge of trying to do the best I can in letting my kids have the experiences that they need to understand the consequences of their actions. But I think it's imperative that parents spell out the very serious consequences of some risk-taking behaviors, including drug use, and not in a scare tactic sort of way, but in a very realistic way, that these things are incredibly serious for their future, and that you need to provide them a warm and supportive relationship, and you need to support them through thick and thin, and you have to tell them that you will be there whether things happen or not, but that you have to spell out that you have expressed disapproval of illegal behavior, of drug use, of underage drinking, and that you are their parent, not their friend. So I think that you need to provide that in the context of a very warm and supportive relationship with them.
But if a child has a problem, does it always mean that the parent was bad?
No, not at all. I think that there are some parents who are just doing the right thing, and for some reason, because of exposure opportunity or bad luck or genetic wiring, or who knows? I mean, we know very little about all of the factors that predispose a person to a negative consequence, but I think that a parent can't blame themselves or blame a particular thing. One of the things that we found through decades of research is that the development of these problems is complex, and that there's a multitude of factors that go into whether or not you have a problem.
And in Florida, we've really, our prevention efforts have always concentrated on the individual and helping the individual develop their life skills, their ability to make good decisions as they move through their life. What we are learning now, along with the brain science, or because of the brain science really, is that experience and environment play a big role in adolescent development and even our own adult behavior, so that the experiences that we have and the environment that we live in also have a role to play. And it's a complex role. We don't know all the dynamics of that, but we do know that even as simple or as complex as how the brain is maturing through those adolescent years, and then even as we age and how our brain changes, experience and environment and genetics all have a role to play. And so from a prevention standpoint, we are really looking at the experiences that our youth have in that time frame when their brain is developing, and we're looking at the environment that we all have to live in. And our prevention efforts are growing from one where we are doing an individual kind of an intervention to one where we're doing something like Be the Wall, where we are trying to educate all the parents in the state of Florida using marketing techniques about how their behavior, how their own behavior, their ability to be clear, be firm, have this relationship has a huge impact.
What an enormous responsibility that is. Dr. Condon, quickly, you have a final thought you would like to add to this?
I'll just mention that we have all this new science about the developing brain, and it presents new challenges not only for parents and for prevention people about what does this mean and what are the impact, but it also presents a real challenge for our researchers is what is the impact of drugs on this developing brain. And we don't have the answers for that, but we'll have them in the not too distant future.
Very good. Senta, 10 seconds.
Prevention is a collective responsibility. We all have a role to play, and it behooves all of us to take this science and put it to use.
Very good. Amelia?
I would like to second that. I think that we need to learn better ways of working together to get these messages out, and that there'll be new messages and new information that will be just as important.
Very good. Well, we are out of time. And before we go, we want to leave you with some resource information you can find at the end of our program, or it can be found on our website at www.mctft.com. And then look under the Broadcast and Videos heading for this program. The Brain on Drugs. On behalf of my guests, Senta Gowdy, Dr. Timothy Condon, and Dr. Amelia Aria, I'm Stan Rhodes. Thanks for watching The Brain on Drugs. Take care. We'll see you next time.